Dear friends and colleagues, good afternoon from Helsinki and welcome to this Smart and Clean webinar about how we can all be climate conductors. And during the next 2 hours, I will be your host. I'm Tina, and we will have 3 conversations on how to work together for climate solutions. As you may all know, we are a Smart and Clean community here in Helsinki region, and it's our final webinar today. So it's really nice to see you all, and hopefully there will be some others joining us a little bit later as well. And we will have today 3 sessions, like I said, 3 conversations. And if I show you the program very quickly, in the first one, we will talk about wicked problems like climate crisis and biodiversity crisis, how to solve these kind of complex issues globally, and how to start something brave and new that has never done before. And then in the second session, we will talk about, again, about those sustainability issues and connecting them with economic success. As we all know, they can go hand in hand, but very often still there is a conflict between those 2 issues, and we will showcase with our great speakers on how to make a good business case out of sustainability. And then in the final session, we will talk about how to scale these solutions and operating models globally. And I'm really happy to say that we are organizing this session in collaboration with the City Business Climate Alliance, and we have our dear friends from that alliance talking about how to really make big impact through cities, leading cities and big cities in the world. So once again, warm welcome to you all, and like I said, I will be your host today, and we will be using our chat for communication. So unfortunately, I don't allow you to speak. You can only follow, but be brave and ask questions and make comments to the chat, and we will make sure that we can have a little discussion and Q&A between the sessions. And if you are a Twitter person, you can use a couple of hashtags, systemic change and climate solutions, because this is what we really want to make. We want to make a difference, and how to work together between private and public sector and all the players together to really make impact. I hope I didn't forget something very important, but further ado, I'll just let our first speaker to come to the stage virtually. So first we have Mari Pantsar from Sitra. So Mari, you have a long experience in leading all kinds of diverse, both in public and private sector, and you know how slow and difficult a change can be, or changing something. So now you are leading a sustainability theme in the Finnish Innovation Fund Sitra, and I would love to hear from you how you kind of take the angle from your side also to how we did Smart and Clean community or project together. Mari, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Tina, and good afternoon, everyone. So as Tina mentioned, I am Mari Pantsar, and I work at Sitra leading the sustainability solutions theme, and I have seen the clean tech development programs from many perspectives in Finland during the past 15 years. And I must say that the Smart and Clean Foundation has been one of the most interesting and kind of inspiring projects that we have done. And I'm happy to share with you some background of the Smart and Clean Foundation, and also about the journey that we did together with Sitra and the foundation, and how we are going to continue. But at first, I would like to share with you a couple of words of Sitra, the Finnish Innovation Fund. So the first slide, please, Tina. So the Finnish Innovation Fund, Sitra, we say that we are a future house of Finland. So actually, Sitra is a combination of a fund and the Think, Do, Connect tank operating under the Finnish Parliament. And as a fund, we get our annual budget from the returns of our endowment capital and venture capital investments, and those we invest in future-related projects and also studies. And today, the value of our endowment capital is a bit over 1 billion euros. And Sitra's aim is defined in the legislation, in the Sitra Act, and our aim is to increase the competitiveness of Finland. And in the sustainability solutions theme that I lead, we focus on the circular economy, nature and climate solutions, sustainable everyday life, and also global collaboration. So for example, we organize World Circular Economy Forums every year in different parts of the world with our partner network. And those forums gather together thousands of decision makers and business leaders across the world. And we discuss about the circular economy agenda for the next year. But about 7 years ago, it was the year 2014, we at Sitra started a project to help the Finnish industry to make their transition towards carbon neutrality. And Tiina Kähö and later also Jaana Pelkonen joined Sitra. And during that time, we had a lot of discussions with, I would say, the most ambitious business leaders and companies in Finland. And together we decided to establish a business network called the Climate Leadership Coalition. And the aim of this coalition is to increase the ambition level of Finnish and also the European climate policy. And today, the CLC, which is led by Jouni Keronen, is the biggest European climate company network. And its members employ globally 520,000 people and represent over 70% of the market cap of the OMX Nasdaq Helsinki stock exchange. And today, what is very interesting is that many Finnish politicians actually say that the CLC is a most welcome initiative as it gives kind of support for the politicians to do more ambitious climate policies. Because if the businesses and business leaders require more holistic and ambitious targets, no one can any longer say that it ruins the competitiveness of the businesses of Finland. And when we look back for, let's say, 8 or 10 years, we can actually note a huge shift in mindsets of business leaders in Finland. So earlier, most companies saw climate policies mainly as a burden, but today they understand that the climate crisis, of course, it is a huge threat for their businesses, but it is also a huge business opportunity. And many companies, at least in Finland today, welcome even stringent climate policies if the rules are predictable and there is a level playing field. So the CLC business leaders discussed that if Finland really wants to be among the forerunners in global climate action, we need an international scale reference area where the companies can, in public-private partnership with cities, develop and demonstrate climate solutions that have also export potential. And when these solutions are scaled up to other countries, Finland can increase its carbon handprint. Thus, we started together to build a reference area for smart and clean solutions. And Helsinki Metropolitan Smart and Clean Foundation was established by Sitra, by the state of Finland, 5 cities, several forerunner companies and universities. And we collected about 10 million euros for orchestrating the low carbon transition in the metropolitan area during the years 2016 and 2021. And the aim was nothing else than to make a step change in climate solutions, not only in the metropolitan area, but also in Finland. And what was actually unique in the foundation, as we see it, is the commitment of these various parties. So the governing bodies of the foundation include mayors of the biggest cities in Finland, including Helsinki and Espoo. We have the CEOs of the largest companies in Finland, senior civil servants, and heads of research institutions. So this was the starting point for the foundation 5 years ago. But however, when we are now looking back, we can see that during the past 5 years, understanding of ecological sustainability challenges have increased significantly. Next one, please. The IPCC's 1.5 degree report in 2018 gave us a very clear message. So it said that as we, the mankind, have waited too long, we have really ended up in a situation where the question is no longer just about giving up fossil fuels in energy production, but we must also pay attention to how we produce and consume materials. And also, according to our study, which was done together with Material Economics in 2018, production and consumption of only 4 materials, namely cement, steel, plastic, and aluminium, would fill the entire carbon budget, even if the energy used for their production is low carbon. Next one, please. So we understood that in order to solve the climate crisis, we also need to move towards the circular economy. And also during the past couple of years, we have learned that nature loss is at least as acute challenge as climate crisis. So resolving global biodiversity crisis also requires immediate, far-reaching, and also comprehensive action. So according to International Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, 1 million species are now threatened with extinction. And the Dasgupta review on the economics of biodiversity in January this year stated clearly that we must start to value nature and the ecosystem services, because our whole economy, as well as our well-being, and in the end of the day, our lives depend on nature. And also last week, IPCC and IPBES jointly stated that nature loss and the climate crisis must be tackled together. It also said that almost all measures that increase the resilience of nature serve to mitigate the climate crisis. But on the other hand, some measures that may serve to curb the climate crisis can be devastating for the biodiversity perspective. So these two challenges really go hand in hand, and they must be solved together. And next one, please, Tina. And when we look at these huge challenges, it is clear that we cannot rely that technologies alone can solve the situation. So we must really try for systemic change, and we must face the root causes of ecological challenges. And these root causes are the wasteful and leaking economic system that we have, overconsumption, and in addition, our perception of well-being. However, with all this new information that we have received during the past couple of years, the importance of public-private partnership and system change has only become more and more important. So we really need close collaboration between all sectors of the society when we are aiming for a systemic change and when we want to solve the root causes of the ecological sustainability challenges, not only develop technologies. Because this is not only a technological challenge, it is to a large extent also a social challenge. And all actors have a significant role to play in the systemic change. So the companies, they are the ones who create solutions and develop technologies. And then cities, on the other hand, they must open their infrastructure and help companies to develop and demonstrate the solutions. And the cities also must use the power of public procurement very wisely. And then state has a vital role. It must create incentives to build business cases for sustainable solutions and level playing field. And then finally, the citizens, they create the market with their choices. and they also choose the decision makers. And in the end of the day, I believe that the citizens play the most important role. Next one, please. And it has been really great to see, at least here in Finland, that citizens really want to take part in solving the ecological challenges. And the next step in the sustainability agenda should be to develop solutions which really engage citizens. And it is very important that people understand that sustainability actions mean better future and better life for them, not only sacrifices. So this was everything that I wanted to tell you about our journey together with Sitra and Smart & Clean Foundation this far. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mari. Really, thanks for your support and participation during the last 7 years or something. We've been working together and trying to push this change forward. Thanks, Mari, a lot. And for you, all the rest, I will be continuing with my talk a little bit. I will try to explain how we did this for the last 5 years with the Smart & Clean community. And after that, we have a little time for Q&A. So meanwhile, I'm talking now, I will continue my story. Please use the chat opportunity to ask questions from Mari as well, so then we can continue. And just to remind you about the hashtags, if you want to use social media on that. But indeed, today we are talking about Smart & Clean as an example, as a 5-year pilot or initiative to make a step change, make a kind of working model how to make greater impact in climate solutions together with private and public sector. And like Mari said, already 7 years ago, we were quite clear about the fact that cities play a major role, since all the infrastructure we see from our windows are within the cities, and this is where we can make the change. But when we started working 2016, this is kind of the picture that we had in the metropolitan area here in Helsinki. We had hundreds of really nice projects within waste, buildings, mobility, digital smart city solutions, and bioeconomy. And we kind of could already see that, yes, the piloting culture is really good, and it's kind of booming innovations, but they don't scale. We don't really have a holistic picture of what is happening, and all kinds of technologies are being tested, all kinds of great companies are there, but we needed something more. And like Mari said, we started working together with the leading businesses, as well as the cities, the government, and the R&D community, how to make a different kind of approach to all this. And as you can see here in the picture, we have a kind of partnership of 29 partners conducting 14 leading companies. Then we have the major cities here in the Helsinki region, including Lahti, and the metropolitan cities, the big cities here in the capital region. And then, of course, very importantly, we have the state actors, including Sitra, where Mari is coming from, and the research institutions and the universities. And then with these partners, we were thinking how to organize this. And I always say that governance models are not maybe that sexy, but we think that this was quite a good idea to put all the commitment and all the resources in kind of non-profit foundation. And this has been our foundation where our team has been working for the last 5 years. And the innovation here is that we had like a threesome. We had the cities, we had the corporations, and we had the state and the R&D people and organizations, and they have all donated us money for the 5 years. And maybe you asked now, why 5 years? Well, that was something that we also were thinking in the beginning, what would be a good time period? Would it be kind of permanent, long-term commitment? Of course, that's always great, but back then we thought that we should have a project that also has a deadline. And that was the thinking then, that let's make this a little bit longer than a normal development project that is typically 2 to 3 years long, but let's make it fixed term for 5 years. So we started 16, and we already knew then that we are going to end in the summer of 21. The idea was that the donations are kind of for the whole 5 years. And from my perspective and from our team members, my team members Ina and Jana will be presenting today how we actually did this and what are the learnings. But from our perspective, it has been really valuable that we have been able to concentrate on the work that we were there for. So really the impactful actions, coordinating, collecting data and all that kind of important things. And no fundraising was needed. And then another aspect of our project that maybe is a little bit different from the others is that we wanted to have the highest possible decision makers on the table. And here is our board of directors from the last 2 years, and we have had the honor to have the CEOs and the mayors and really senior directors deciding what kind of actions are needed. And this has been maybe Mari can comment on this because she has been in the board from the beginning, but maybe this has been also quite a learning experience for the board members to make joint decisions together in a kind of a new formula, neutral formula for the climate solutions. And then us, I can advertise that you should have a look at our video, which is really beautiful, but unfortunately couldn't present it today because of technical issues. But we kind of have been the orchestrator, and orchestrator is something that is very kind of common to talk about today. It's fairly new role for something that is maybe more than facilitating or coordinating a big group of actors and big group of ecosystem. And that has been our role. And we could almost say that we are like a conductor, like you can see in the picture with the symphony orchestra. We don't know the stuff ourselves. We have the experts in the community, but we have been the orchestrator who is having the view on the big things, have the holistic view and the coordination of the whole thing. And then very quickly about our projects. First 3 years we initiated 7 change projects. We call them change project because we wanted to have the change, permanent change in the city infrastructure somehow. And we did really great things, as you can see, with air quality, renovation, stormwater quality management and so forth in biofuels. And we had about 150 companies involved, and some very important references were made for especially a little bit smaller companies that is very needed. So we are very proud of these projects that we initiated them, but then we started thinking, you can see in the picture the green lines. We started thinking about the impact. Okay, we have some technologies and issues tested in the city, but that's it. Then the projects typically end after 2 or 3 years, and then there will be another project. And we started looking at ourselves internally as well as IPCC's report back in 2018 and saw that, is this really something that we kind of are here for? Is this something that Smart and Clean should do? Because we have great colleagues that do these projects brilliantly anyway. So then we kind of were shocked as the whole world after the 1.5 degree report, and we understood that we need to go, what Mari just mentioned about the root causes, the structures, not only trying something new, not only trying something innovative on the side of the core business of a city or a company. And you know all this, we way behind in climate targets. And now on top of that, we had the biodiversity crisis that was not so much topical on 2016, but now we know that those two go really hand in hand. And then we understood that, okay, our fossil world is becoming worthless in less than 10 years. We need to change everything. And this is at the same time the biggest opportunity there is. And if not us Finns, now I can be a proud Finn and say that we have all the capabilities here in Helsinki. We have the education, we have the technology, we have the trust. We are like a small community here. We have the wealth to do this. If not us, then who? So then I will end soon my talk, but just to give an overview of the approach that Jana will continue after me, is that we needed to look at the big picture. And now maybe a question to you as well as an audience. Do you know where the emissions in your city are coming from? Do you know where the internal emissions lay, which are the bigger ones? And then the emissions that you have probably outsourced, the consumption-based emissions are coming from. So that was a kind of turning point moment for us to put this like this in a presentation that, okay, this is Helsinki metropolitan emissions. These are the big slices that we need to work on. And then Jana will soon explain through one case, which is the plastic case, how we've been working for the last 2 years now with our model, which means that we really have the target where we want to go in the middle, and then we have all the needed actions and all the needed players on the side. And there we can actually create the impact that we want. And in our case, of course, this is CO2 and other climate emissions and promoting circular economy. So I don't go really deeply into the model now, but I hope you got an idea of our 5-year journey, which has been very kind of educational in a way that we started doing a lot of things concretely, and by doing concrete things and at the same time looked at the big picture, we've been able to create a model that we really hope that will be used globally with other actors as well. So I thank you very much on my behalf at this point. And if you have any questions, please do send them to us now and we can have a look. Thanks. And also you can ask questions to Mari at this point. Mari, can you turn your mic on if you're going to say something?
Okay, that would help. Thank you so much. So you asked me about the learning experiences in the board of the Smart and Clean Foundation. And I must say that it was very, very, very interesting. And it must be very interesting for all the participants and board members, because of course the decision-making processes in businesses and then compared to cities, they are very different. And I guess that the business leaders, they learned about what is the kind of decision-making process in cities, and that can have some stickiness. And the business leaders, they normally can be a bit more agile. So I think that is a very kind of valuable learning for all of us.
Okay, thanks, Mari. And I don't see any further questions in the chat, so I think we can then move on to the next speaker. Once again, thank you, Mari. So let's move on to the second session. Just one moment, I will have a look. Yes, so how can we make circular and climate solutions really impactful ones, and how do they go hand in hand with economic success? We have a few speakers following Jaana's talk, and I would like to introduce now Jaana Pelkonen, my dear colleague from Smart and Clean. And Jaana, can you now let us know the way that we've been working to make systemic climate solutions within Smart and Clean community, and then what could we learn from that? Jaana, please.
Thank you, Tiina. And well, good afternoon to everyone. My name is Jaana Pelkonen and I'm from Smart and Clean, and I'm going to tell you with few words the way we at the Smart and Clean have been creating ecosystems for systemic climate solutions and how we orchestrate and lead them towards impactful results. Next slide, you can go to the. Anyway, the first question is, as Tiina also explained, is to understanding the need for climate solutions and systemic climate solutions. And that is sort of the basis for our work as well. If we want to lead our cities to 1.5 path of 1.5 degree path with our climate solutions, it is not enough to do emission reductions only on the area-based emissions through technical and technological solutions. We need also system-level change and system-level solutions, such solutions which include also consumption-based emissions. And closed plastic circle is a good example of that kind of solution. So you can jump to the next slide. It is a concrete example of a circular economy and a systemic solution, which actually has emission reductions impact both on area-based emissions as well as consumption-based emissions. So that is the reason why we work on that as an example. When you take up to work or solve a systemic challenge, the first thing is that you need to understand what the challenge actually is. And for that, we use this, our pie model or donut model or whatever you want to call it, where in the center there is this climate solution itself, and then around that there are all those sectors or partial areas where you need to create a change or which need to develop in the right direction in order that your climate solutions or your sort of the core solution actually happens. If you think of the closed plastic circle example, that of course means that we have to address the actual material flow steps of the plastic circulations, from sorting to treatment to reuse of plastic products. But also quite a lot of market-related aspects need to be taken into consideration. For instance, procurement of products or demand creation for recycled materials, as well as product design or sometimes also market regulation. Next slide, please. When you have sort of understood your challenge, which you need to work on, then the next step is to form the ecosystem that actually can do the work or can actually then create that solution that you need. And for that, we can also use the same model that we have sort of created to visualize the steps of the ecosystem creation by adding to your inner circle and a second layer or the outer circle where all these activities and actions can be listed that are needed. And when you attach to each activity a player or an actor that actually is able to produce that sort of change or a certain result, there you actually have the core of your ecosystems. This means that in your ecosystem you have only parties that actually have a concrete and really clear role in your ecosystems, and they also need, they know what is expected of them and what are their responsibilities, why they are part of these ecosystems, and they can, in most cases, also enter the ecosystems with their core capabilities or core activities. You don't have any free riders, and you have only the sort of needed parties involved in your ecosystems, which makes it more efficient to work with or to cooperate with other parties. And it also makes it very clear, this kind of thinking, how important the cooperation between public and private sector is, because in this sort of model you can see that there are certain sectors which are clearly responsibilities of the public sector, and then others which are more sort of directed to private sector activities. And of course the cooperation between those two is very important for the entire cycle, sort of to be coordinated in the right direction. Thank you. Next slide, please. Another important fact or aspect of our work is the use of information and data. You need to lead or manage your ecosystem towards the right direction, and it's important that you use good quality information for that purpose. And that has been the main task of us Smart and Clean as an orchestrator, to deliver good quality information for the use of the ecosystem. The first thing that we did was that we had to sort of quantify the main target that we want to achieve. In your circular economy cases, it can be material economy, it can also be jobs or volumes of business, but in our case it was the emission reductions achieved. And we estimated that if we reach the wanted recycle rate for plastic, the equivalent emission reductions are the same as 80,000 residents of the metropolitan area. Another way of using data is to use it in modeling your cycle. And we produced also this kind of a data model for plastic circulation. And this model helps us to, first of all, to create some scenarios of the whole plastic cycle. It also enables us to identify bottlenecks or also value creation points of the entire cycle. But also, most importantly, with this model, it's a tool to estimate the impact of single actions. So when you change one part of the cycle, it shows you what kind of change is required in other parts of the cycle, and then what kind of impact that one sort of injection change results into the recycling rate. So it's a very important tool to estimate the changes needed in various parts of your cycle, so that the overall results or the overall target, which is in this case the recycling rate, actually is also achieved. And next slide. And this tool also helps us to quantify certain partial targets, and which we have also done for to help our ecosystem partners to evaluate and adjust their own activities towards these targets. So basically we can say how much needs to be collected, how much plastic needs to be treated, and how much plastic needs to be used and reused in new products in order to achieve the overall recycling rate targets that we have set ourselves. And anything, I mean, if we stay anywhere in these targets below the target level, then the overall recycling rate will not be realized. Another way of looking at this impact way of working is to sort of analyze the impact creation from point of view of input and impact created. Next step. First, usually when you start to work on the climate solutions and systemic solutions, you of course start with studies and analysis and research work. And that is of course very important, as I explained earlier, but they don't really create any impact as such if they are not transferred into actual actions. The first step is often the single actor actions. And in our case also, we have a very good example of that, where our environmental agency started collecting hard plastics in the area. Unfortunately, the impact of that collection work, which is potential activity, but the impact is very low because there is no feasible processing facility for that hard plastic. So at the moment, all the collected plastic though most of it is just stored somewhere waiting for the treatment facilities. The next step is usually the cooperation projects, and out in that area also we have a good example of a city-led project which takes hard plastic trash and creates new products out of that trash material or recycled material through 3D printing. It's a very potential and very interesting approach, but also the impact is also low because it's based on testing facilities and testing volumes. On the other hand, we do know that according to a Pareto thinking or Pareto philosophy, there are those 20% of actions which actually create this 80% of the wanted impact. And of course, when we know that, we also realize that, okay, there's quite a lot of work to be done. We are not there yet, but we are happy to say that our ecosystem, which continues the work after Smart and Clean, is also committed to work towards those targets. And we hope that in a couple of years, they will be able to tell you quite impressive and more concrete results of their work. The next step also, if you want to show that. Thank you. That was my contribution to this discussion, and hope good luck for the rest of the webinar.
Thanks a lot, Jana. And this was a good kind of summary of our approach and the closed plastic circle as a case. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, this can be used in kind of any change you want to achieve, and hopefully this will trigger ideas for your wanted change after Jana was explaining about how to create more impact and how to get there in a more impactful way. But thanks a lot, Jana, for this. And then we go to the international speakers, and we have Ronald from World Business Council for Sustainable Development. You've been part of this CBCA program, and you've been working in the field for built environment and sustainability for a long time, and you look at things from the business perspective. So Roland, are you online? Can you start?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much, Tina.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, great. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me and giving me the opportunity to talk a bit about the WBCSD's work. As you said, we have been following the work of Smart and Clean with a lot of interest, and you've also served us as a model for the City Business Climate Alliance that we started with C40 and CDP a year and a half back. And so I'll share just a few maybe examples from our work, and then a few thoughts for this issue of how we need more collaboration to reach our climate goals. So next slide. Yeah, that's just a cover slide. Thank you for the next one. So we are a global business-led organization. We have 200 multinational companies in our membership. I'm based in Geneva, that's where our international secretariat is, but we also have offices around the world. And these companies work together with us really on driving the transformation to a more sustainable capitalism and a more sustainable world. Next slide. We have 6 global programs to address this overall emergency. And end of March, we launched this new report on Vision 2050, Time to Transform. We've worked on that with all our members to outline what are these key transformations that need to happen in order to address what we call the 3 planetary emergencies: the climate emergency, nature loss, and also inequality, which in particular with the pandemic really has come to the fore as one of the most critical issues we need to target. And so these are 6 programs that help us work with our members across these different systems to make sure that within the market economy, within all our transactions as companies and with our stakeholders, we really focus on sustainability at the heart of decision making. So maybe on the bottom right, the redefining value is certainly the cross-cutting and most important agenda. How do we move from an extractive model to a regenerative and inclusive model? Next. So I have 2 examples that I wanted to share with you. And the first one is on our work at the intersection of the built environment and circular economy. We have been looking at the barriers and issues around circularity in the built environment. We issued a report 2 years back that looked at what are the barriers, and especially looking at the market barriers for circular construction, which on the one hand are in the mindset, in the lack of a business case to bring in more circular models. For example, the value of the price of virgin materials being very low, there being an absence of incentives for further circularity, but also a complete absence in terms of valuation of circular practices. And on the other hand, the education barrier, which translates into a lack of awareness and a lack of understanding of this topic. So we're at the moment working on a report that brings some case studies to the fore and really looks at the value that is being created economically, environmentally, and socially, and how we can convince different stakeholders along the value chain, so material manufacturers, construction companies, but very importantly, developers and investors, of that value that we can create through more circular construction. And as you said before, obviously this is of particular importance in the built environment because this system is responsible for 40% of global emissions, 40% of resource extraction, and also about 40% of waste that is created through buildings and building projects. So the triple 40% challenge. If we go to the next slide, one of the case studies we are looking at is actually in Copenhagen, Upcycle Studios. This was built about 3 years ago. It's 20 row houses development, 4,000 square meters, and they upcycled crushed concrete from the metro construction to use in this building site, and also reused a lot of glass from another project that could be used in this one for the windows. In total, about 900 tons of concrete were reused. And also the heating system was completely renewed based on solar heat pumps to bring down the energy consumption of this particular building. And the next slide, just to give an image of how this works. Obviously, it's a situation where you need a local system. You need obviously the city and different stakeholders to work together to look at what is available material, how do you bring it from one site to another. So many issues need to be worked through in order to make such a system happen. Some of the results are on the next slide. That can show us in terms of carbon savings, quite significant reductions in embodied carbon, but also full life cycle because of the improvement also of the operational carbon emissions. And as shown here, significant savings in terms of material use. We're also breaking down in terms of the new versus upcycled material usage and how that CO2 gets distributed and also where the costs are. Some of the findings are, but that's just one case study, there's a couple others, that you can achieve quite significant material savings. You do have higher costs, obviously in the design phase, because it takes you longer to develop the project. So in the absence of certain incentives and certain support mechanisms, the business as usual still points you towards driving your costs down, driving the timing and the quality of your work before looking at these sustainability issues. So these are things to be considered in these type of projects. Now here, the city also played obviously an important role, providing incentives, and also, just as an example, not imposing any color restrictions, because obviously something looks different when you're reusing existing materials. So that's one case. Maybe next. Another example is from the mobility angle, and this is something that's happening in one of our CBCA partner cities in Lisbon, where under the leadership of companies from the WBCSD and the Portuguese BCSD, Business Council for Sustainable Development, they created this corporate mobility pact. So in order for the mobility system in the city to change, obviously all actors need to pull in the same direction. So they were able to bring in almost 100 companies from the start. This has been growing over time to really align their actions around electrification, around shared mobility and space management. And this is the type of activity that is needed so that a city and its businesses and citizens can really move forward in the same direction. The next couple slides have also some of these results. So we've just completed year 1 of this initiative with a 1-year assessment where you can see significant increase in terms of investment into electrification, charging, e-vehicles, also to some extent active modes. Maybe the motorcycle one is one you can question, is this an active mode? Due to the pandemic, certain activities that were planned have not yet been implemented, such as, for example, to reduce parking spaces for non-EV vehicles and also to increase the subsidies for employees to use public transport. Obviously, with the restrictions and people not supposed to use public transport, there was certain delays in this. So I think also an example that shows even more this importance for a city and the businesses to come together around a common vision and to create an initiative and a kind of an organization to really move that forward. So I'll close with a few thoughts on the next slide. And yeah, really starting by congratulating you for this work of the Smart and Clean Foundation and showing us, on the one hand, a very holistic approach, an approach focused on impact, all the systemic actors that need to be part of it, and actually having an organization who does that. I'm surprised that Smart and Clean finishes this year. I thought your job would not be over until at least 2030, because we know that the next 10 years is when we, especially with your hockey stick, we really need to work on these initiatives that then help us increase that impact. But I think it underlines work we've also seen in our experience. For example, work we've done in Amsterdam on creating an organization a few years back that looked at one district, Southeast, and how can we drive a zero emissions district across energy, across transport, across buildings, etc. And that need for a common vision, so bringing the stakeholders together, build that alignment and trust, and this orchestrator, I really like this word, the dedicated organization that takes this on, because this is nobody's business, but somebody needs to take this on. It's everyone's business, in other words. And then really move to project identification, collaboration to implement, and ultimately monitor results. So thank you. These are some thoughts, and we do hope to pick up a lot of your learnings also in our work going forward, and we look forward to staying connected and moving forward on this journey. Thank you. Thank you very much, Tina.
Thank you so much, Roland, for your kind words and really nice insights about how to take this work forward. And of course, I couldn't agree more that this is not ending after 5 years. We still have a lot to do, and that's why we are so happy that we've been able to work with you already a few years now, and to kind of have the discussion and change ideas. And our model can't be replaced or copied 100%, but I'm sure there are kind of things that you can pick up in many places. So once again, thank you for your contribution, Roland. And before we have the Q&A, we will move to the next speaker. And now it's time for the cities to tell their experience. And we still are in the session of kind of a business angle. And we have here Santtu next from the city of Helsinki. And you've been working a lot with the startups and scale-ups and different kinds of entities during your career. And Santtu, can you highlight now what is Helsinki doing next and what is to be expected tackling climate crisis further on? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Tina. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. I believe that the Smart and Clean Foundation was established for a good reason. And that reason is, if possible, even more important today than it was then. We need our lives, our economies, and our cities to be more sustainable. And we really in the city of Helsinki are committed to continuing and accelerating innovation and cooperation with academia and private sector, and help develop solutions and also implement new solutions for smarter and cleaner cities. Now, this is really a sort of an overarching goal. Personally, I believe it will be one of the most important missions for all of the cities. I also believe it will be one of the biggest business opportunities for the future. But in cities, we really need action on multiple levels. And this goal, whether it's from business side or innovation side or from development side, it really needs to be integrated into the everyday workings of the city. One is that it already is, but it will be increasingly embedded into and implemented through citywide policies, whether it's a climate policy or a circular economy roadmap or the whole economic development policy. And one of the core focus areas is really pushing forward and accelerating the innovation and cooperation related to innovation with the universities and private sector, because first of all, the cities cannot solve these challenges alone. And then we also need the business ecosystem to scale and expand and take these ideas to new markets. Can I have the next slide, please? So this is at the very core of how we are now planning to go forward. Many of these initiatives we are building on were invented by the Smart and Clean Foundation. So at the core of what we're now doing is, of course, the new city strategy that's now being designed or written, but also the Testbed Helsinki platform, which is basically a way of discussing with the market and academia on how to use the city as a platform for private innovation, how to scale the ideas that private sector has or the academia has. The second what we are looking at is increasingly ambitious R&D lighthouse projects that need to be done also with academia. For example, the air quality sensor network in Helsinki that's been growing on for the last 3 or 4 years was actually initiated by the Smart and Clean Foundation. The second is really looking at the new entrepreneurship around urban technologies and clean technologies, and also the innovation cooperation with the larger corporations. And third is launching a brand new circular economy program. So can I have the next slide, please? So a few words about the test beds. It's not only about the Smart and Clean, it's about all of the city's infrastructure and services that we can leverage to help research and innovation. We've been doing this for at least, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years, but it's been quite fragmented, and that it was becoming difficult to manage. And now we opened the Testbed Helsinki platform that is just for interaction between national and international partners who want to come and test and innovate with Helsinki and in Helsinki, whether it's healthcare or mobility or air quality or waste management, buildings, and so on. So this is something I encourage companies and parties who are interested in working with Helsinki to check. It's very much about facilitating the innovation process. And the emphasis is going more and more towards smart and clean solutions. Can I have the next slide, please? The another one, what we are now launching is, which I would say it's direct continuation for the Smart and Clean Foundation, is the Circular Economy Program. The launching event was actually just a few days ago. We had some 250 interested parties, mostly private sector, at the kickoff. And this will focus on many of the topics actually launched by the Smart and Clean Foundation. The core topic is around real estate and construction, to create an alliance with academia and private sector to innovate, test, and scale new solutions. But it is also about leveraging the city as an asset. So we already have first 3 concrete pilot cases where city is a platform for new kind of business, whether it's about dismantling and reusing or recycling old building materials, building digital platform to encourage market of recycled materials, or research and development on creating totally new solutions that will make buildings more easily recycled or reused or repurposed in the future. The aim is of course to create new business opportunities, but also cut CO2 and other emissions. So this is something that I also encourage companies and private sector to really engage with the city of Helsinki. Can I have the next slide, please? The third sort of a new initiative is Urban Tech Incubator. And I really want to also thank Smart and Clean Foundation for working with us on creating the concept for this incubator. This launched actually a few weeks ago. The first batch call should be in June. The idea is to really create a curated community of talented teams and early phase companies who want to work on urban focused technology and solve global urban challenges, to bring together the Finnish top tier research in this area, the very good startup ecosystem in Helsinki, and connect these to global challenges and also bigger corporations and companies who want to scale the solutions. The incubator is created by City of Helsinki and Aalto University, but it's in partnership with Helsinki University and Metropolia. And we also want to grow the partnership network and connect with also private ventures. The Urban Tech Incubator will be located in Maria 01 and Aalto campus, so it's really located at the very core of the Helsinki startup ecosystem. I think all of these examples or initiatives are really about, one, taking the smart and clean initiative and integrate it into the workings of the city, and at the same time really opening up the working with the whole ecosystem and creating platforms for co-innovation between huge number of activities and actors. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Santtu. Thanks a lot. And as we can see, there are a few bigger seeds growing within the city of Helsinki at the moment. And it's interesting to see now within the few years' time what you will be telling us, let's say 25 or so, how it has been growing. But a lot of opportunities there for different businesses to work with the city. Okay, great. Now it's time to move on to a business case that is very interesting one. And we have Kalle Saarimaa here from Fortum. And Kalle has been also a board member for Smart and Clean for the last few years now. I believe that, Kalle, you will be telling us how to do a real transformation as a company and at the same time create value in a completely new setting with your businesses. So Kalle, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Tina. I will focus a lot on the kind of a systemic and vision level of this, that kind of also elaborates the importance of foundations like Smart and Clean. I will discuss a bit like where I see circular economy is going currently, and then trying to then promote the discussion around what are the future solutions. So not that much kind of a company specific presentation, rather a vision of circular economy of materials in the future. So looking forward for the discussion and questions. This is I will not spend much time with the presentation, so this is kind of a teaser type of thing. Sorry, some background activity. Just wait a second. Yeah, that happens occasionally nowadays in the Teams world. So let's get started. I first of all, if you take the next page, want to kind of see where the world is going, and we have a lot of discussion around climate change, which is of course and key and most important challenge humanity faces, but often we isolate the climate change discussion too much on the energy system. Still, the main point is in energy. But I see that our clear and even more difficult challenge will be the circularity of materials. So we really live now on a debt every year, accumulating the debt. Why I think it is like that the energy is not that big of a challenge. If you take the next one, looking at it from the systemic perspective, I'm simplifying, I know it, but energy in the future will not be scarce resource. I think that is important to understand that we have already the technology and tools to make energy not scarce resource for us, but we do not have that for the materials, and that will kind of change the systemic perspective of many things we do tremendously, so much that I would say it's very difficult to even picture the world, like what things we can do and how we should do material circulation in the world where energy is no more scarce resource. but we don't have the same luxury with the materials. If I take a peek to, if you take the next slide, I take a peek to specific material, hydrocarbons as materials, not hydrocarbons as energy. Hydrocarbons, in this picture, I have here plastics, but if you kind of think about what hydrocarbon is basically everything around us. Like we are hydrocarbon, we eat hydrocarbons, we typically wear hydrocarbons, plastics are hydrocarbons. So if you look at them, like how big challenge we have ahead of us with this material, and we often simplify the discussion too much. I think Jana gave a good presentation on plastics, but how often we think what plastics in essence are, and if you look at today how we make plastics, most of the plastic is fossil based, like around this 400 megatons we produce annually. Vast majority is fossil based. Then if we are to go for a carbon neutral world going forward and we want to disconnect from the fossil feedstock completely, it's not maybe realistic until 2050, but that should be the aim if we really want to stay below 1.5. We have a lot of discussion using or with the companies coming to the markets with innovative bio-based products, and those are in a way good solutions. But the challenge is that we really do not have sustainable biomass in our hands enough to kind of really cover up for, and this is only plastics. Then we should use biomass for food, for clothing, for if we want to make everything from biomass, that will just not work. Then a big part of the future need, which is increasing, as you can see by the way, will need to come from recycling, but even that has its limits. So in the future, actually, a big share of the materials we make need to come from CO2, directly from CO2. And what does that mean in practice? It actually means that when we take the black box away, and we understand that biomass can be only a small part of the solution, instead of energy being scarce resource in the future, we see actually carbon becoming a scarce resource in the future, which is as an idea can feel fairly unorthodox in the beginning because we talk about decarbonization all the time. But if we understand the systemic level here, actually kind of a sustainable carbon will become a scarce resource. And then there comes the energy into play. How can we then use CO2? That is where we need the energy, and it needs to be then renewable in order for this system to really be then circular. And this is but this is just examples. This is kind of just a teaser material. We could talk for this for hours, but main point here is that in order for us to stop kind of this linear optimization of linear economy and moving to real circular economy, smart and clean type of initiatives, initiatives that connect different sectors and really then can change the systemic perspective all the way from regulation, from city infrastructure to businesses and so on and so forth. They are in a central role of making the systemic change happen. So what will happen then to circular economy of materials in this domain? If you take the next page, today we are pushing in EU with the tools that are not providing us the wanted outcome, but still we continue doing that. This kind of first era of circular economy on the left-hand side of the picture is very much dependent on the thinking. Let's separately collect everything, then mechanically recycle it, and then incinerate the residues. Quite frankly, I don't believe that this will bring us to circularity. I think there are so big fundamental challenges with this thinking. It's like materials are not getting more simple; they're getting more complex. Mechanical recycling can only deal with simple materials. So I think that is as simple as that. So I see that the circular economy will evolve to this kind of molecular level, molecules to materials type of technologies, where you really need to break down the materials to smaller molecules and then build the materials from that angle. And then you need to, for inorganic materials, you can't landfill your metal, like mining residues. You need to extract from mining residues, from batteries, from various applications. You need to be able to extract the valuable metals and take them back to use. But this is a new approach to circular economy, and it requires a lot of energy. So in that sense, energy and material systems are becoming even more interconnected. And again, it means we need to have entities or mechanisms that helps us to reach systemic level changes. Otherwise, we stay on this kind of optimizing linear economy, achieving small results in terms of circulation, but not really solving the equation going from linear to circular. If we take the next page, and finally, kind of some conclusions. We need to kind of stop approaching energy as a scarce resource. We need to start thinking energy is actually the thing which we can use to help to solve our challenges. Of course, not fossil energy, renewable energy, but when we think it from that angle and we don't think about only saving energy, but we start thinking using energy to make world circular, then we are on the right path. So energy will not be a scarce resource. Carbon and critical metals, they will be scarce resource. Then kind of stop doing the same thing and expecting new results. In EU, we are still pushing this very narrow-minded approach to how to make world circular. And then because that approach doesn't work, we collect a lot of material and we still dump it all around the world because we don't know what to do with it. So we need to go towards this kind of recycling. So for instance, we have a big fleet of waste to energy plants in EU. We need to stop emitting CO2 from waste to energy plants, rather capturing the CO2 from waste to energy plants and making the world circular from molecular level. So widening our perspective, what is recycling? And then for the systemic part, which I didn't cover in this presentation, but very important part to make this happen is that we need to start taking environmental costs into account in the value chains. There are some good things like ETS, the CBAM mechanism might work, but these are still so much narrowed down into EU level, and we have a global crisis. So huge systemic challenge we have ahead of us. And we need this systemic, we need this kind of cross-sector working methods to solve this, but also we need to understand, get the systemic level right when we go forward, so we can build the right elements into that system, not to do only point solutions in kind of a wrong system. That will not be a fast enough way forward. But I think that concludes my presentation this time. Very kind of more like a teaser into this topic. I would be happy to open it more later on.
Okay, thank you so much, Kalle, for this. And you're right. I think this is something that we could have had the whole 2 hours about, and you kind of went so much into the fundamental shift of thinking how to make a systemic change, and it only shows us how you've been thinking about these things as a business representative. And I can only say that I totally agree with you with the last words, that we can try to make a systemic change, but where do we aim at? So we should be right on that, so we don't do wrong work. But now it's my pleasure to continue the discussion from the research side. We have Jussi here, from also our board member from Smart and Clean, but in your day job you are working at VTT, the Technical Research Center of Finland, and I guess now in the next 10 minutes we're going to hear how VTT and the R&D world is saving the planet, right, Jussi?
Indeed, Tiina. Thanks for the possibility of being here, and also thanks for Kalle. We haven't actually coordinated our presentations, but they actually follow quite nicely along the same path because I will be actually talking about through 4 examples of how do we actually do some of the things that Kalle was talking about capturing CO2 into materials, and also how do we actually sort of get the materials for the new energy revolution, and also how do we get the food for the ever-growing population. So if I can go to the next slide, please. And actually this is, we'll just go to the first example. I guess there is an animation, yes. This is the first example that I'm showing about what we're doing in research. It has sort of 3 major elements. First of all is the application. As we know, the world is getting electrified in a really rapid pace. So we are hungry for materials that we can use for sort of storing energy. And whether it's batteries, whether it's supercapacitors, or whether it's actually some of the transformers like electrolyzers, which transform electricity into hydrogen, and fuel cells, which do the other way around. And what we know actually as a part of the electrification and the abundance of electricity, it means that we also need more materials. So it's a kind of a circle. The more we sort of produce renewable electricity, the more we need materials for those devices that are producing it and also storing it. So therefore, it's also vital to find alternative material sources for these type of applications. And what actually we've been doing together with some of the other researchers is to be looking for biological waste streams, which would have actually been utilized as not even as energy, I guess, but sort of just led to compost, and turn that into a char that can be used in those devices. And the nice thing about this is it's not only just replacing something that already exists, it's actually performing better. And this is something that if we look at the way the biomaterials especially are moving, that's the direction. We are actually finding applications where it is a superior alternative. So this is the first example of what we can do. The next one is about really the energy to materials, and that was something that Kalle was already discussing, and it's just showing one of the many initiatives that are around in this area. This one in Finland, where we are looking at combining CO2, be it from directly from the atmosphere or from the industries, and hydrogen produced by clean electricity into products, into hydrocarbons. This is especially important in a case when we're looking at the whole transportation sector. We're seeing that passenger cars are being electrified quickly. And that's going to be the case. Even the lighter lorries will eventually be electrified. But when we start talking about shipping, when we start talking about aviation, electrification is not as widespread option as in other forms. So we need to find ways to have truly sort of carbon neutral fuels for those applications. And these are some of the initiatives that we are currently doing in order to make that technology, de-risk that technology, and also see that to demonstrate it in scale. If we go into the next one, please. The next one is actually sort of a continuation of the same story. This now thinking about where should we actually start collecting the CO2 from, and as we know that there are certain sort of really heavy polluters when it comes to CO2, and these are actually the sectors that also supply the materials, the building materials for most of the cities. So we're talking about the cement industry, and we're talking about the iron and steel industry. And what I'm actually here, we have an initiative where we're looking at the cement industry and looking at can we actually electrify the kilns where cement is being produced, and that way actually we'll be able to generate a pure CO2 stream, which we can then capture, and again using the same principle as in the previous slide, to produce hydrocarbons, be they used as fuels or sort of storing energy in some other forms. So this will, again, if we can get this technology work and demonstrate it in scale, this will be a sort of a very a big advancement in first of all, really sort of reducing the amount of CO2 emissions in the world, but also making the whole sort of building sector, if we think about the footprint of buildings, reducing that also tremendously. Because again, as Kalle was saying, there's not enough biomass to replace everything. So we can't start building everything, for example, from wood. We still need cement, we still need steel. So we have to find ways in order to reduce the emissions from those. And in that way also make the whole built environment more environmentally friendly. The last example that I have has to do with our daily life and the way we eat, and especially how we can actually supply proteins for the ever-growing population, and knowing that actually if we think about also from the biodiversity point of view, there's a lot of the arable land. Actually, it's not the whole land; it's the arable land. It's actually designated to producing either feed for animals or grazing ground for the animals themselves. And as we know, that is an unsustainable way of producing proteins. So we need to, in order to provide more proteins, we have to find alternative ways. And of course, one way is to go into more sort of plant-based diets, but also on the other, as another alternative, because we have in any of these cases, there is no single silver bullet that will solve everything. But as a sort of another way of producing proteins is actually use microbiological routes, where we would convert, use either waste streams, we could use sun, we could use hydrogen, CO2 from capture CO2, feed it to microorganisms, produce proteins that can be used as a feed or even as a food in order to provide an alternative protein source, which is much more environmentally friendly than the route that we are currently using. So here are sort of 4 glimpses into a future which is not hopefully too far away, but things that are being worked on technology de-risking and sort of trying to prove things at scale, and hopefully at one point having a sort of proper business cases, and this will become mainstream. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jussi, for a really quick glimpse indeed, and quite a lot of information at once, at least for all of us who are not so in depth in these technologies and these phenomena. But you kind of paint a picture, asked directly from you first, because you were last, and we have a couple of minutes of time. You paint a picture of quite a potential to scale. But what would be your message now? We have here city representatives and maybe regulators and businesses. What do we need to do next to do this quicker? Because as Kalle was pointing out, and Mari in the beginning, that we are in a hurry and we need to make these systemic changes a little bit quicker. So,
well, first of all, I think what we found out and what we want to see more. I mean, cities are excellent innovation platforms.
Yeah.
So we have to find ways in order to utilize that even more, and have to find ways where we can sort of co-create in the cities and sort of start building these kind of demonstration platforms, be it based on data. It's usually a combination of data and physical things, and sort of get the companies involved in it so we can actually finance it in a way, and then find ways to collaborate and just start sort of doing the stuff. I mean, as we already started, but we need to do that in a much more rapid fashion than before. For the regulators, I mean, obviously a lot of this that we are, for example, this example here is something that's not necessarily, I mean, there are certain, it could be seen that this type of food, for example, might not be accepted because of regulation. And of course, then we also have to think about from regulation point of view, if something is safe, it's much better for the environment. Why is it forbidden?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I don't know if the regulators, of course, you have a lot of lobbyists who are kind of telling their stories, but do they have a holistic picture on this? There are so many insecurities, I guess, that it's not very easy to make a decision sometimes. But I think we have, yeah, go ahead. Please.
No, sorry, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, now we have a little time for Q&A, and I have at least, I can see at least one question here about, from Alisa to all the panelists, that yes, we Finns are really global leaders in circular economy. However, the companies have been focused mainly in Finnish and Nordic markets. Do you think that will change in the next years? I don't know if Kalle, would you like to answer this, or any ideas?
Yeah, happy to. Happy to. Let me see. I get my video on. Yes, so happy to answer that question. And I think it's so it was this scaling question. I think it's Finland. If cities are good test beds, so is Finland. I could say that we many of these solutions, for instance, what we are developing in the fields of battery recycling, plastic recycling, this what we call waste to materials, so the CCU for waste to energy. All these things, they require piloting, they require proof of concepts. So we are in a phase with many of our investments that we are doing first generation facilities, and Finland is often a good place for that. I say often because we have also some challenges with our environmental permit processes and that sort of things. But Finland is a good place for that. So I would expect that when we have built our first generation facilities in Finland, that is our strategy actually, is then to scale them further into Europe, and why not globally, where we have the regulatory possibility to do that. So first in Finland, then scaling when we know it works.
Okay, thanks, Kalle. And then Santtu, I don't know, you are online as well here. What would you answer to this question, and how can Helsinki as a city help companies and maybe be further international companies as well to come to Helsinki and to scale quicker?
I think this is excellent question. Also, one of the major challenges. It's how we use city as a platform is really one opening opportunities to pilot and test and to do R&D with the city, which is more about rather early phase of the innovation cycle. Of course, we also work with the bigger companies that might already have a scalable solution. But if we look at really going to the international markets, I think it's very fragmented, the picture. We have huge amounts of Finnish good companies that can already scale internationally when the solution is digital. But when the solution is more about major investments or physical objects, it becomes a lot more difficult. So I think what we need to do is, one, at least on the city side, is to help take the companies a bit further on. Instead of doing just this first 3-month or 5-month pilot phase, to look on how we could scale the actual pilot phase, help the companies take the product a bit further. The other one for the early phase companies is also the incubation and the acceleration and helping them find money so they have opportunities to grow. But I think after that one, there's one is trying to become a better customer as a city. We practice it. Helsinki Energy Company is already very good customer for new kinds of solutions. They're also developing their venturing work. We also are moving more towards innovation partnerships and pre-commercial procurement in city organization. I think good examples would be the AI for Sustainability project run by Forum Virium, or the new pre-commercial procurement for electric city ferry, which is totally pure pre-commercial procurement. Nothing like that one exists at the moment for the weather we have in Helsinki. And we need to push this kind of being the first customer model forward to really move forwards to look like whole sustainable recyclable buildings. And we did really nice R&D project, or it's still going on how to build a parking building from wood. It doesn't exist. There isn't even a concept. So we're developing the concept so we could actually buy them at one point. But once we start looking at going really international, there's one is simply about the market exposure and use the connections we have on how to expose the great solutions created here abroad. But then we also need the bigger companies. We need the bigger companies who can sort of collect a group of small innovative companies and solutions around them and be capable of actually delivering large-scale solutions abroad. So not an easy question, but I think that's one of the core questions, and also internationally big question. I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago about how to scale clean tech and green tech solutions, and the problem is same everywhere. So I think there's a lot of room also for international cooperation.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks a lot, Santtu. And like you described, there are many things that the city can do better in the future. But thank you, Santtu, Jussi, Kalle, and Roland as well for this session. It's time for us to move on to the last session of today. And let's move on to the scaling up. Like you ended, Santtu, your words. The scaling up is a big issue for everybody, and to make climate solutions to accelerate quicker. We need collaboration between cities and businesses and the R&D community. And now in this final session, we are listening first my colleague Ina, who is reflecting our learnings from the 5 years period that we've been existing. And then after that, we have Pamela and Laura from CBCA to tell how they will do this globally. And hopefully they will also use our learnings in that. But Ina, it's your turn now, so please go ahead.
Thank you. And you can go to the next slide immediately. So hi from my side as well. So I'm just quickly going through about maybe 6 key learnings that we've had with the foundations, to just sort of explaining to you what we've thought about in this model of, or in this way that we've been working, what have been the most important building blocks in making these sorts of systemic change projects for the climate crisis. So the first one, of course, has been this community, and you can't just have any community, but I think that the main thing about making this into a unique community was that it had a very clear purpose to make climate solutions, but also it had a commitment from the side of actually all of these partners had committed to funding for the 5-year period, and also to committing to decision making on the highest level of the companies for the same period. And this sort of structure was the sort of foundation for everything that we've been able to do. You could go to the next one. Then the other thing that I think that we've done specifically or especially well has been to really think about the problem. I'm sure you are well aware of the Einstein quote that if he would have to solve a problem, he would use 99% of the time thinking about the problem. And I think that what we've tried to do with, for example, the plastics project has been to really understand the different dimensions of the problem of plastics in order to be able to know what kinds of things we need to solve. And then you can go to the next one, which is kind of a follow-up from this. So if you then understand your problem and you are going towards the solution, you really have to think about what is the real impact and how are you communicating in a visualized way the goals to all of the participants. So we've we've used in all of our work different impacts that we've tried to calculate and think about beforehand. And of course, for us, the CO2 emission reduction potential has been the most important one, but at the same time, the circularity of material, the innovation potential and business potential of the solutions have been very important, because this is also about making new business in the Helsinki region, but then also about the sector-based and consumption-based emissions and the social and environmental impact. And if you can show impact on all of these different fields, then you kind of know that you are building a pretty strong solution. Next one. Then the other thing about the ecosystem or the community that we've been able to work is that ecosystem is one of these jargon words that everyone is using, and sometimes it feels like it doesn't really have any real purpose behind the word, but we've really tried to also show how the ecosystem that we are working with is actually sort of like the biological original word for ecosystem. So in our case, if you look at the pink circle picture of plastics, you really see that all the actions and actors are dependent on each other. If one of them drops out, it doesn't work, that the whole thing stops moving, and so this kind of dependency between the different actors is actually very, very important, because it also builds the community to understand that they are doing something together, and only together they can change the system. The next one. Then our role, the orchestrator's role, like has been already mentioned quite a few times in this session, has been an extremely important one. And like Tiina explained in the beginning, the idea about the conductor orchestrator, that is not the expert on all the different instruments, if you think about an orchestra, but really is the one who's kind of like thinking about the end product and what we need to, what are the actions that we need in order to get there, is a really important role, and there aren't that many these neutral kind of actors in the world that have the possibility of concentrating only on the sort of collecting the data and thinking about the impact and thinking about the steps that are needed. But also the leadership has to be taken by the main participants. Also in the plastics project, for example, we've had a very good way of bringing together the main participants to actually make the real decisions. Next. And this is maybe the about the participants and making decisions on the highest level, is also that sometimes you need to make compromises, because these sorts of system-wide changes are not done with the kind of thinking that everyone can all the time gain the same sort of winnings, but sometimes you have to lean in and give in a little bit for the actual system to change. But if you have been able to build trust between the actors, this helps a lot in understanding that the common good can be something that you can try to achieve, while you might have to compromise sometimes. And the next one is just a picture that you can look it up in our website as well. I won't go to the details of this one, but it just basically tells you the same steps that I was just kind of talking through, that how do you make a system-wide change project, what are the sort of things you have to think about in order to get there. And now, as our work is ending, it has been a real pleasure for us to work with C40 and then the other actors on the CBCA network. And we hope that some of the things that we've been discussing for the past couple of years with them will continue to learn to be used in their work when they scale these city business climate solutions to 100 cities in Europe. And I will now give the floor to the speakers from this network. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ina, for your kind words. But unless, Tiina, you wanted to say a few introductory words yourself?
Yeah, well, it's great that you jump in already. And Ina, thanks a lot for your prompt presentation once again. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. I just want to say thank you, Ina. That was really kind of in the core, in the nutshell, what we have learned during these 5 years. And now it's time to kind of pass the baton, I could say, to Pamela and Laura, and you can continue here. And let's hope we have a few minutes of Q&A still to say thanks and have few questions. But please go ahead. Now we're really looking forward to your work and how you came up with this whole alliance in the first place. And like Ina said, from my perspective, it has been such a pleasure to work with you guys over the 2-3 years already, and hopefully you can continue in a good way. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tina. And this time, let's move on with the presentation. And I must say that the feeling is very much mutual. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with the foundation, with you, with Ina, and the City Business Climate Alliance. This initiative that we're going to present very briefly with my colleague Laura from CDP is actually very much inspired from the work that the Smart and Clean Foundation has done, but also that other cities around the world have done on city business collaboration. So I know a lot has been said on the role that cities can play, that business can play, the importance of cross-sector collaboration. So I'm going to try and be brief. But if we move on to the next slide, I just want to provide maybe a few additional stats to provide even more context on why city business collaboration is absolutely crucial. So this one comes as a surprise. I'm sure you all know that cities are actually big carbon emitters that consume over 2/3 of the world's energy, and they account for more than 70% of carbon emissions. However, if you really look at where these emissions come from, which CDP did not so long ago for one of their reports, you'll see that cities' municipal operations actually only produce 3% of all the emissions that are occurring within city boundaries. And the rest is controlled by other stakeholders, such as citizens, businesses, or other levels of government. Hence the need for cross-sector collaboration. And then if we look at the other end of the spectrum at what's happening in the business world, where we know, and we've seen many, and we've heard many examples today, we know that businesses are being increasingly ambitious about their sustainability and climate action strategies. And this is just an example. Among the 400 biggest companies in the world, we know that 40% of them have now set an emission reductions goal. So all the ingredients are there for us to really achieve impact. And we think there's a really urgent need to harness this momentum to do it, because our own research at C40 has shown that the lack of coordinated city business collaboration is actually one of the main barriers to climate action implementation at city level, which is the reason why we have created the City Business Climate Alliance. So if we move on to the next slide, I'm just going to give you a quick elevator pitch on CBCA, as we call it. So CBCA, as Tina said, is actually a joint initiative of 3 different organizations. So C40 Cities, my employer. C40 Cities is a network of almost 100 global cities who've made ambitious climate commitments. We also have WBCSD. You heard Roland just a few minutes ago talk about the work that they do with their 200 business members who, again, have made very ambitious commitments in terms of sustainability. And then the third partner in the alliance is CDP, currently represented by my colleague Laura, who you'll hear in just a few minutes. And CDP, as I'm sure you all know, is a fantastic environmental data disclosure platform used by over 10,000 stakeholders across the world. And so together, we have formed this City Business Climate Alliance, which acts as a network of cities and businesses, really. And the idea is to create systemic change through joint climate action. We operate on 2 levels. On a local level first, so we've selected a number of cohort cities we are supporting directly to reduce emissions at city level. And this means that we're helping them set joint commitments with their local business communities, but also design and deliver co-created projects. And we'll come back to that. And on top of this, we also operate on a global level. So we have formed this wider global CBCA network for peer-to-peer support, which also act as a mechanism to scale up advocacy and action. And so we see this as a great mechanism to replicate the CBCA model that we have developed. If we move on to the next slide, you'll see that we currently have about 20 cities in the CBCA Global Network. The 8 cohort cities that I just referred to, so the cities we're really working closely with in developing local city business partnerships. And you can see that it's quite a varied group. So we have the likes of Dallas, Durban, Lisbon, New York City, Manchester, Stockholm, Tel Aviv, Vancouver. So cities from all over the world. But we also have 2 other categories of stakeholders. We're very fortunate to have a number of fellows we invited to join the network. And the Helsinki Metropolitan Smart and Clean Foundation is one of them. And these are cities or, such as the foundation, independent entities who have been operating exactly in this space as city business partnerships, who have achieved real tangible impact, have been very successful, and who've been instrumental in providing us with inspiration to shape the CBCA model. And the third category of cities that we have in the CBCA Global Network are network cities, so cities who join to learn from their peers. We can move on to the next slide. Again, a lot has been said on what city business collaboration really means. So I will only spend a couple of minutes on this slide. What I wanted to say is that with CBCA, we're trying to take a bit of a holistic approach, similar to what the foundation has done. So the idea is really for us to facilitate long-term, strategic, non-commercial business engagement. And by non-commercial, I mean pre-procurement, so before the city engages with businesses as part of procurement processes, and pre-competitive, because again, we see cities as acting as orchestrators to bring together different members of the business community to create a safe space for dialogue. And within that space, businesses can facilitate a dialogue not only with the city, but also with other peer businesses and companies, and some of them might be their competitors. So if these platforms are shaped in the right way, we believe that they can help raise ambition by, again, setting joint commitments that both cities and businesses sign up to. They can create an enabling environment, and this can happen through policy consultation, for example, which can help cities understand which regulations they need to set up to help businesses change the way they operate and maybe shift their practices so that they're more sustainable. They can also act as platforms to facilitate business-to-business collaboration. This links back to what I was saying in terms of pre-competitive collaboration. And last but not least, they can foster innovation. And we've heard many examples of this today already, in terms of how the city can act as a test bed, but also run co-creation processes with startups and other members of the business community. So all in all, the idea is to really bridge the gap between the emission reduction goals that the city might have and the implementation of projects by building this capacity and this space for dialogue and trusted collaboration so that all the stakeholders involved can accelerate their emission reductions. And we think this needs to be done not only in line with the Paris Agreement, of course, but also in line with the principles of a green and just recovery. So this needs to come with social and economic benefits, really. And I think this might be my last slide. Let's check what's on the next one. And I might, yes, pass on the mic now to my colleague Laura to walk you through a couple of examples.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Pamela. And I have the exciting job of showing you what this looks like on the ground. So as Pamela, summarized so perfectly there, what we're really trying to do here is accelerate the climate action that we know cities and businesses both want to take, bring those parties together and help them do it more effectively, more equitably, and importantly, more quickly, so that we will have a better chance of reaching our global goals. So the first example that I'm really excited to share with you is from the city of Stockholm. So Stockholm is actually the first of our cohort cities who we've been working with for about 9 to 12 months now, depending on the city. But they're the first to launch their city business partnership platform. And this is a very focused piece for Stockholm. It's acting as a pilot within the city that they're going to expand to additional areas. but the starting point is looking at mobility and transport, very specifically delivery and freight. So the aim is to work with businesses to reduce emissions from deliveries and freight within the city. This was launched earlier this year and is called Climate Pact Delivers, and at the moment is a partnership of 10 major businesses within the city, including some names that I'm sure are very familiar, IKEA, IBM, for example. And in joining this collaborative platform, each business agrees to carry out the pieces that are listed here on the slide. So implementing on a business level, a solution that will reduce emissions from deliveries and freight, sharing results. And this is something that I think a lot of speakers have said today, that learning and sharing together is a really key part of this collaborative approach, and to kind of improve and increase and speed up action across different partners. And finally, to participate in workshops and seminars to, again, increase this learning and sharing. So this is our very first example. It's quite an unusual model for our city business climate alliances, because Stockholm have started on a specific model to scale up much bigger across the city. But if we move to the next slide, I'll show you the alternative model, which we're exploring in Dallas. So Dallas is one of our 3 North American cities that we're working with as part of the cohort. And for, I'd say, Dallas, more than several of our other cities, this equity piece is really, really key. So they already had a strong comprehensive environmental climate action plan and a strong economic development plan. These things weren't really very well aligned, and they had a really strong idea. They wanted to have an equitable approach. So this is what we've been supporting them to do, following a model of city business collaboration that we've seen in several other cities that has this model of a leadership group of businesses who form working groups to deliver projects on specific sectors or focus areas. But in Dallas, we're really building this with equity at the foundation. So in the coming weeks, we're going to be holding a workshop with Dallas businesses, engaging all 25 of the City of Dallas's chambers of commerce, which I'm sure is a huge scale compared to some of our North European cities here as well. And these chambers of commerce represent the really diverse community in Dallas, making sure that the African American Chamber of Commerce is there, the Latinx Chamber of Commerce is there, representing different sectors as well. So from the offset, we're going to have this real equitable and varied approach as well. And the aim is that we follow this model where we build the leadership group of diverse members and then implement working groups on specific areas, as I mentioned, with the aim of launching this year, which will be very exciting indeed. If we jump on to the next slide. So I've mentioned this kind of global piece as well. So while we have these local level partnerships building, one of the really valuable pieces about City Business Climate Alliance that we've heard again from multiple speakers is this learning by sharing. And in our case, this includes a series of online events, as well as an online knowledge sharing platform where there's a discussion board, resources can be shared, examples, events, etc. In addition, we're plugging into international events and city level events to kind of increase the awareness of our city's success as well. And we're helping cities and business access external and our own events and resources as well. So we could jump to the next slide. I'm going to look ahead to next steps and what we have coming up in the City Business Climate Alliance. So as I've mentioned, we have one partnership already launched. The aim is to launch a further 7 with our initial cohort, before we also expand on to an additional cohort of cities, hopefully later this year. And really our high level aim is that by 2025, we're working with over 100 cities, including 36 cohort cities as well. And I'm sure you'll have noticed we're focusing a lot here on global cities and local businesses. A key element of the CBCA, which we're still building out, is this piece on global business leaders. So we know that there are some really remarkable businesses taking action that we want to share, learnings and knowledge with the rest of the world. And CBCA is a platform for doing that. So we're currently starting to engage with global businesses to share that knowledge. And finally, one of our focuses for this year is building our capacity to deliver all of this. So we are currently fundraising for all of this work. If you have any friends, let us know. But we're really keen to continue the excellent work that we've seen in Helsinki and keep spreading this impact across the globe. And we're really confident that CBCA is a really impactful mechanism for doing this. So thank you so much and look forward to hopefully working with you in the future.
Fantastic. Thanks, Laura. And thank you, Pamela. I'm looking at the clock. It's 1 minute left for our seminar. So it's great that you kind of highlighted your ambitious goal, and we are really looking forward to and following your program where you are going to head in the just next few years, and really wish you all the best for your work. It has been a pleasure, like mentioned before. But now it's time for me to thank you all, because we hardly have any time left, and it's already 5:30 here in Helsinki. Warm thanks from the whole team of Smart and Clean and the whole community for your work today, and for the last 5 years. It has been really great to work with you all. We will follow up with a little email having a little summary of our learnings and hopefully an article about our work. Looking forward to keeping in touch. But now, thank you everybody for your time and to be with us today, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.